we are entering into our second week of our Living the Vision series. Now, this week I saw a cartoon. It was it had a dad who's had his eyeglasses kind of propped up onto his head, like we do on the top of his head. And his kid came along and says, "Daddy, are your glasses up there so you can see your ideas clearer?" And I thought, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing in this Living the Vision, our theme being on course, is we want to see our possibilities in this life clearer and in a more powerful way. And so we're talking about being on course, which means to be navigating our lives according to the compass of our soul purpose, our core purpose in this life, so that we move beyond fear-based living, beyond haphazard living, and we begin to live a life that is authentic and deliberate and enlivening, and a life that brings forth our greatest gifts, whatever they might uniquely be for every one of us. Martha Graham wrote something so powerful. There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all of time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any medium and will be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours, clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. So that's what we're doing. We're opening up the channel, and we're attuning to that inner knowing. And we're remembering some very important things that are key to our science of mind and spirit. That there is a power for good in this universe. It's the love intelligence that has created all of creation out of itself. And we are one with this power for good. You couldn't be beyond it. You couldn't be outside of it. And this power for good is always conspiring for your highest and best. And I'll tell you what, this power is a wonder-working power whenever we get out of its way and believe that it can work for us. As Emerson said, get your bloated nothingness out of the way of the divine circuits. And in a way, that's what being on course is all about. And so as we go forward with this on-course theme, we're also looking at 5 pathways for empowering the possible. Last week, we started off with the first pathway, visioning. And I remind you that we discussed that vision is really born of the heart, that the heart is both the wisdom and the way of our higher vision. It's the wisdom, meaning that as we attune to the heart and turn away from the voices and the forces that would distract us and steer us off course, when we tune into the heart, we come to know something. We come to sense a higher leading that we can follow. So it's born of the heart, and then we can put to work the tools of the heart that we talked about last week, and that's to visualize, internalize, and actualize. We'll be doing a CD set of this, no doubt, when we're all done. So today, then, we move into the second pathway, and that is claiming. Now, let me tell you, gang, this is an enormously powerful step. It's one thing to have a vision, but it calls for us to claim it and to own it. So claiming is our stamp of total acceptance of the vision, our stamp of total acceptance. In a way, claiming is the high art of entering into a covenant, a personal covenant with life, with your higher self, but most importantly, a personal covenant with your vision, your sense of higher direction in your life. Really, claiming is to become an undeniable, non-negotiable, fully committed yes, a yes to that vision. So much so that it propels you forward, it moves you forward, and it allows the universe to work for you. And I tell you, when we are that yes, then the all-powerful machinery of the universe goes to work to create serendipity and resources and opportunities we could never foresee. And yet what it really requires is our full ownership that stamp of approval, that personal covenant, that yes. So important. Search your hearts on this. And I bring to you a Bible phrase. I think it's from the book of James. It came to me this week. The double-minded person is unstable in all his ways. What is it to be double-minded, but to have a vision and yet have a bunch of stuff competing with it? And we let that happen. We become double-minded. I like the way it's put in the Aramaic translation of the Bible, which, by the way, was the language spoken in those times and the language of Jesus. And in Aramaic, that same passage is, whoever wavers in his mind is troubled in all his ways. Double-minded. And oh, how we waver in our minds. That's why we have this science of mind and spirit, to learn how to give direction to our consciousness, to let our heart come forth and not be blocked by our consciousness. It's exactly what we work so deeply on in our breakthroughs class. It is to look at how it is we're double-minded, and thus we sabotage our dreams. We come up with a great vision. We have an inner leading. Our hearts are calling us to something. And yet, at the same time, high-level personal sabotage, human-level sabotage kicks in. And so we have this vision, and yet at the same time we start telling stories about how we're not good enough or how it is that we failed at some other time. We have a vision and we get double-minded and we start criticizing the vision and talking about how it's improbable or how it's far-fetched. Well, if something deep begins to move in us, and then we get double-minded and we start dwelling on all the drawbacks and the yeah buts and how it is that we have no idea how we could ever pull this off. Maybe it's bigger than we are. Yeah, we have a vision and we get double-minded by saying, well, if I don't know everything about it from the outset, if I don't know where it's going to take me or how it's going to show up, I won't go. And we wonder why our lives stay plateaued or even deteriorate over time, because they're not enlivened by this sacred stuff of our personal, wondrous vision. Double-minded and wavering, troubled in all of our ways. But there's another state. There's another state that anybody who's moved forward dynamically had to discover and embrace. And I think it's put so very beautifully by W.H. Murray, one of my favorite quotations of all times. And he's the guy that was the second in command leading the expedition up Mount Everest, the first one to get to the top. And there's a whole backstory to his life, but I don't have time to go into that. But remember these words. He said, until one is committed, there's hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. That's that double-mindedness. Concerning all acts of initiative in creation, there's one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. That the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents, meetings, and material assistance, which no one could have dreamt would have come their way. I have learned a deep respect for one of Goethe's couplets. Whatever you can do, or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Yeah, that claiming is that personal covenant, that becoming fully committed. And then when we do, life begins to work for us. So to have an on-course life is to have an on-purpose commitment. It's to give up the demand of the universe that you have a full disclosure of everything that's going to happen or where you're going to end up. And it's the willingness to get out of that comfort zone and trust that this power for good is going to work through you and work through your commitment, your claiming of your good. There's another ancient story from the Bible, and I want to remind you of the story of Abraham, or who was initially called Abram. Now, the story goes that Abram got to the ripe old age of 75 and decided that he needed to have a son to carry on his lineage. I don't know what wife Sarah had to say about that, but nonetheless, Abram went to God and prayed to have a son. But as the story goes on, God had a bigger idea for Abraham. And I want to pause and say that no matter where you are in your life, No matter how accomplished you are, no matter your age or your track record or whatever's going on, how difficult it may be for you right now or whatever the conditions of your life, hear me. God or divine mind has a bigger idea for you. So if you've given up on yourself, understand that that which supported you, that which brought you forward has a bigger idea than that. And this thing of being on course is to listen to that bigger idea, to be a student, an endless student, sitting at the feet of the bigger idea of God for each of our lives. And so God had a bigger idea for Abram and said to him, "Go forth from your land, from your kindred, from your father's house, to the land I will let you see. I will make a great nation of you and will give you blessings and make your name great." So when Abram asked for a son, God essentially said, "Well, that's fine, but here's what I really want. I want you to leave everything you know and rely upon. And I want you to go forth to receive a land that I'm going to show you later on. And then great things, not only a son, but also a great nation and your own greatness. These things will I provide for you." Now, I know a whole lot of us, if we were in Abram's situation, would have said, "You know, God, that's great, but just a son would be just fine. Let's just leave it there. Let's just stay with that." Because we demand to know how it's all going to turn out. We want assurances of one kind or another, lest we shy away from this. But you know what? Abram didn't do that. As it says in the Bible, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to a place which he was to receive as an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was to go. Imagine that, leaving everything and embarking not knowing exactly where you are to go. If you really think about it, some of the greatest leaps forward in our lives are just like that. It's that we know it's time and we leap forward and we don't really know where we're going to go, but we know we must go. But you see, 3 promises came to Abraham when he left in that kind of high trust. God said to Abraham, "You will be guided. You will be changed, and you will be a blessing." And that's what I say to every one of us. When you really leap out and follow your God-inspired guidance system, you'll be guided. You will be changed and transformed, and you will become a blessing. You'll always be a blessing if you're living more authentically, deliberately, and purposefully. And so, off he went. Now, what if we lived like he did? Just that way, with that radical kind of trusting, understanding that we don't see around corners. We cannot see all that will unfold, and yet we can honor this something within us. So, Abraham began his journey in Haran, which is now a part of modern-day Turkey, and he began a lengthy journey, and he followed Spirit's guidance to a new place, and when he was 100 years old, and Sarah was 90, they conceived a son, Isaac, which is interpreted to laugh. I think Sarah had something of a laugh when told that at that age she was pregnant and would deliver a child. And so they did. And so then it was that God changed Abram's name to Abraham, meaning father of a multitude. Father of a multitude. And he's recognized as the father of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, as the common point of origin for over half of humanity. One willing to walk according to the higher purpose. And there's a little additional story. Abraham's father was Terah. And Terah means delaying, lagging behind, and loitering. And I got a feeling there's some Terah in all of us too, that sort of hesitates, puts on the brakes, and does all of the double-mindedness stuff that we do. And yet what's possible is that we can birth that Abraham consciousness, which goes forward along that higher leaning. God has a bigger idea. Divine mind holds a bigger idea of you and me than we can know right now. What we can do is say yes and listen and follow. In fact, I'd offer you 4 inspired steps for claiming 4 steps for inspired claiming. And they are caring, preparing, declaring, and daring. Did you get that? They are caring, preparing, declaring, and daring. The first is caring. It's key that we not feel like we're moving forward in our lives by obligation, but that something beautiful has been born of our hearts, and we care for it. And in fact, we fall in love with it, so much so that we could not think of deserting this something that we find within us. And it's important that that caring be ongoing, because we're going to meet obstacles and challenges, and so it's that caring, that staying connected to our passion. That passion can overwhelm our fears and our sense of retreat and keep us going, caring for what's unfolding, even when we don't fully understand it. I was reflecting on my own journey as I was writing all this, and I thought about being that scared kid starting out in the ministry in my mid-20s and not knowing how to do what I was doing, quaking in my boots, struggling, but still caring. I still loved what this teaching is about, and I loved what it had done in my life and how it had grown my self-esteem and seeded a passion within me. And I just kept walking on, kept growing, kept going through the tough times and the great times and continuing on, and I could never have imagined back then when I said yes, or when I stepped into that little ministry up in Portland, Oregon of about 25 people. I could never have guessed I'd be here. I could never have guessed. 25 years as your senior minister and all that we've done. I could never. Probably good I didn't. I'd have probably sabotaged that in some way. Isn't that the case? But it's you and me. That's our journey. Give up needing to know all about it, but follow it, the impulse and the guiding. There's a great teaching story about this, about a holy man who was sitting out on his front porch and he had his dog lying there beside him. And a seeker found out where he lived, and a seeker came to this holy man and he asked, why are some people so zealous in their spiritual practices, only eventually to fall away? And the holy man said, well, let me answer this with a story. One day, a white rabbit ran in that field right out in front of us, ran by, and my dog leaped up and ran after the rabbit, barking loudly. Soon other nearby dogs heard the barking and joined my dog in pursuit. But eventually, as all the dogs began to run across rocky ground and hills and then into the thickets, one by one the other dogs left the chase, all except my dog. Well, the seeker said, that's a lovely story, but what has that got to do with telling me about how it is that some people maintain their spiritual practices? And the holy man said, it says everything. You see, only my dog saw the rabbit, and thus he stayed the chase. You see, what keeps us going is that we have personally, directly, seen something, felt something, connected with that vision, such that our caring keeps us going when we're going over the rocky places or the hills or the thickets, the situations and the obstructions, the challenges that show up on any path, the learning experiences that show up. It's that we've seen something. Other people might fall away because it's not been their experience, but when it's our experience, we care for it, and we protect that. And these 4 steps are not things we do one and then we finish it and then we do another. And no, we do all 4 all the time, every day. And every day we connect with caring for the vision. And then it starts to be about preparing. Preparing. Now, there are certain, pragmatic things we can do, human level activities that can prepare the way, but that's not as important as another kind of preparing, inner preparing. It's to prepare a consciousness that is resilient, a consciousness that remembers that we're one with an infinite intelligence and power, and it's conspiring for our highest and best. And it's going to provide as we keep going. It's to have that consciousness that this power is greater than anything we will face on our journey. And this power never deserts us. It's keeping that consciousness vibrant and powerful. And this, too, is a part of our everyday process when we decide to get on course in our life. It's about preparing for the day in high consciousness, preparing that our consciousness will supersede or transcend anything we face along the way. To prepare, to stay prayed up, as I tell our students. You've got to stay prayed up. you know. And that's not praying for stuff, it's praying as. Being in that oneness consciousness. And it goes before you to make plain and clear the way. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, he declared our lives are what our consciousness make it. And so there's nothing more important to cultivate than that consciousness. So there's the caring, there's the preparing, and then there's the declaring. You know, there's a great power in your spiritual declaration of truth. I mean, there's mindless chattering, but I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about when you know something and you speak your word. That's sometimes a phrase we use in affirmative prayer. When we reach its apex, we might say, I speak my word now for my life. I speak my word for my abundance. I speak my word for my dear beloved one. And that's what our practitioners do each and every Sunday up here. They speak the word of truth. And that word is a seed in this creative universe that brings forth manifestation and healing. And so it's very important to learn this power of higher level declaring, to speak beyond all the conditions and all the naysayers, and to declare that which you know is in action through you. And boy, does that uplift with power. I'm just delighted at how we as a ministry have prepared and how we've also then, through your incredible input over about a 9-month period, we have come to a new declaration of what we are about. It's an extension of our vision and our mission, and you declared it earlier in this service, the heart of Mile High. We've declared something that is not only who we are, but it challenges us to even be more of that and to get busy bringing forth oneness revealed in our lives. And in that heart statement, there's a declaration that's particularly meaningful. Right up front, we declare that we are a radically inclusive spiritual community dedicated to healing lives and empowering dreams. Radically inclusive. I love that. We got input from you that that's one of the things that you most love, that we are inclusive. We're inclusive of the other faiths. We're inclusive of all people and their lifestyles, their orientations, their ethnicity, their faith backgrounds, all aspects of the unique expression of human life. And we've declared we not only are, but we aspire to always be radically inclusive. Even if it means we get to learn more so that we can be even more inclusive, as we brought in Janet Mock and we've worked on understanding the transgender experience, that we might be a friendly home for these principles. We are radically inclusive, and that means that we are wholeheartedly, deliberately inclusive. It means that we're not inclusive sometimes. We're not inclusive if it's convenient. We're not inclusive by obligation. We are radically inclusive by choice. And I love that, and I think that that's a model for the kind of livingness that's going to help humanity survive. To not be exclusive, but inclusive. And I love that. Don't you love that we can state that we are radically inclusive? And we have declared that. So it's a no turning back. This is who we are. So we're caring, preparing, declaring that we might then step forward, daring. Daring to go forth, daring to become and to stay on course. This is how we walk our talk and move forward with the vision, claiming it. I want to conclude with one of my favorite illustrations about this from the life of a great, great actor, a great person, Sidney Poitier. Now, he was born in the West Indies. Didn't know how to speak English. In fact, he was a 7-month premature baby. He wasn't even expected to live. In fact, his father, Reginald, had gone out and bought a wooden box, a little bit bigger than a shoe box, that was to be where Sidney would be buried, in which he would be buried, because they had lost other children. But they still had 8 children to help them work that tomato farm, and though it was a sad thing, they were kind of used to this. But Sidney's mom, Evelyn, had a premonition about him. She somehow knew that this infant had something and had a great agenda and a great gift. So she went to a fortune teller, and the fortune teller confirmed it. Your child is not only going to live, but your child is going to do great things. Your child is here to express great light. And so it was the only time that Evelyn Poitier spoke up tersely to her husband, Reginald, and she said to him, "Get that box out of here. This child is going to live. This child has something that's going to thrust him forward in life." And so Sidney writes about that. And so it was I grew. And when I was 15, My parents couldn't take care of me anymore, and they shipped me off to Florida to my brother. And I got a job as a delivery boy, and I was delivering a package to a door. And this woman came to the door, and I said, I have a package for you. And she said, fine, now take it to the back door. And I said, no, but I've got it right here at the front door for you. Take it to the back door. And she slammed the door. She wouldn't take it. So I set it on the front porch and went to a movie with my friends. Later at 10 o'clock at night when I got home, all my brother's lights were out in his house. And I walked in and I asked, why are all the lights out? And they went, shh. The Ku Klux Klan has just paid us a visit. We're going to ship you across town now because you don't do what you did in Florida. And Sidney writes, yeah, I didn't know what they were talking about at first. I was raised in the West Indies. I didn't know about the defeat of self-image of the American blacks. And so I was shipped across town to an uncle, and he liked me and I liked him, but we didn't have much in common. So I went to Georgia, and I washed dishes because that's what I knew how to do. And then I got tired of Georgia, and I went to New York. Now, nobody told me that in New York it gets very cold and you need a heavy coat, and my West Indies blood was freezing. So he was arrested for vagrancy there, and then he took homage with a cloister of nuns, and he went on washing dishes. But he says he felt this something within him that had to get out, and he knew he had to honor that. And one day he was reading through the want ads, and he saw the phrase "actor wanted," and he thought, great. I really didn't know what an actor was, and I had a very thick West Indies accent, but I walked in there, and the agent was sprawled out in his Brooks Brothers three-piece suit, in all his gray flannel suitism. And I said, hi, I'm here to answer the ad. And he said, can you act? And I said, of course I can act. So the agent threw a script at me, and I took it, and I didn't know how to read it. And so I faked it. After which the agent threw me out and yelled, get out of here, why aren't you washing dishes someplace? So he began, after all the dishes were washed at the Hotel Fostoria in New York City, he began to teach himself how to read. And then he bought a radio, and he listened for hours to the American dialect so that he could get that. And so later on, he went back to that agent in the gray flannel suit, and the agent said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. We have a shortage of black males in our American Negro theater, and we'll give you a free scholarship. And after 12 weeks, if you don't improve, we'll have to let you go. Sidney says he was just in heaven. But then after 12 weeks, the agent came and says, we're letting you go. We're letting you go. And he said, you can't let me go. He said, yeah, we can. We're letting you go. And Sidney said, but I want to be here. I want to learn to be an actor. And the man turned to him and said, you cannot act. Now I pause here. How many people have slapped some kind of verdict on you like that? And said, you can't do that. When in fact, you do have the capacity. You may not have fully manifested or evolved it, but you got it. And so did he, obviously. Sidney said, and so I offered my janitorial services. That's a kind of caring for his vision. He didn't give up. Cleaning and scrubbing, doing more than was asked of me, and before I knew it, there was a man, and he was from London, and he was an agent. And he said, I'm going to film something in Africa, and I'd like you to do a screen test. Would you be interested? And he tried to look really calm and collected, but then he burst out, yes! And the man said to his assistant, fine, get Mr. Poitier's tickets to London for the screen test. Now, through all of this, Sidney had never written home once in all the 8 years he'd been in America, because there's an omen in the West Indies that you never write home from America unless you have money in the envelope. So he hadn't written home. So he went to London and he took the screen test, and he was accepted, and a stellar, of the highest order career was launched. Then the agent asked him, when he was accepted for the part, how would you like to go home to see your parents and maybe stop off in Paris on the way? And Sidney tried to look very calm, and then he blurted out, yes! And so he went home, a full-grown man. He'd been arrested for vagrancy, accosted by the Klan, shot in a race ride in New York, been painfully made aware of his illiteracy, and after 8 years, he was back in Nassau again. And a taxi pulled up in front of his parents' one-room house, and Sidney got out, dressed in his gray three-piece suit. And he peered into the window, and he saw his parents there rocking, and it all just came to him. And he concluded, there I was, looking through that window, and it all flashed in front of me. All those experiences, all the moving through the pain and the grief. And then I knew that something in me, a friendly force, had inspired me to keep carrying it all through. And I knew I could expect even more. Beautiful ones, that friendly force is at work right in you. There's no doubt about it, except maybe in your own thinking. But we're not going to put up with that anymore. It's time to own that. It's time to claim your God-intended higher good. And sense that this precious life of yours is meant to be a great adventure, even a great risk at times. That there are those times when it calls you to leave everything that you're familiar with and embark into the unknown, which is the soil of your greater yet to be, that it might grow and come forth in some wondrous way. We wouldn't be here right now if we weren't here to bring forth some unique, personalized, great vision into expression in these times. So I bless you in that. Invite you to be about the business of caring and preparing and declaring and daring every day. And also, don't ever forget, you will be guided, you will be changed, and you will be a blessing. And so it is.